Here is a country of great contrast.
Great civilization of antiquity.
A foreign country a step away.
All right, we're back at the Casa de Cavazos podcast. Justin is missing because he's having fun in San Francisco. Hopefully he doesn't get murdered. This is Ada Cavazos Cuellar. I'm in Harlingen, Texas. Nathan is in Weslaco, Texas, and his daughter is also in Weslaco, Texas.
Yeah, she is joining us today. Say hello.
Hello.
So what do you want to tell us, special guest?
Me and Madison switched room to Layla's room at that night. We talked about something that it's kind of like the thing you're doing, but different, talking about stuff. It's where me and Layla and Madison think we should make a podcast of anime.
Oh, wow. I didn't know y'all were planning your own podcast.
But we prefer no.
Okay, I think that's all she has for now. She wanted to tell you
Okay.
that she's going to start a podcast, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the special guest needs to go eat dinner now.
Alrighty.
Bye, special guest.
Bye.
Speaking of kids, I thought it was interesting that your daughter thought she could beat me in a half marathon.
Oh, she still thinks that. She was telling me today that she could easily destroy us, so...
I mean, not right now. She'll have to train quite a bit, probably be significantly older.
Yeah, definitely.
But at this time, she's denied.
Yep, super denied. We'll have to wait for Justin's kids to beat us, probably.
My daughter has been throwing out microplastics at school, just like dropping that she's worried about microplastics. One of her friends said something and she told the friend, "Oh, I think the microplastics got to your brain." Then today someone asked her about her water bottle, which is a new metal water bottle. And she dropped that, oh, she's worried about the microplastics getting into her bloodstream and that's why she's using the new water bottle. Very interesting child that I'm creating here with this information that I give her.
Certainly possible. I had heard about the microplastics in the past, especially I actually have a lot of water bottles that end up rolling around the bed of my truck. So I know that all that heat doesn't help. So I'm probably like 50% microplastic at this point.
Oh, I mean, I don't think it's possible to be 50% microplastic, but some of the studies that are coming out are pretty scary. There was one I was looking at that made me start changing things I was buying. And that study basically looked at plaques that people had in their carotid arteries. And they found that the people who had the microplastics tended to be a lot sicker long term. It increased the risk of heart attack, stroke, or death by 450%. So that freaked me out.
That's pretty high.
That being said, my daughter even said, look at all the things we have. How are we going to get fully rid of the plastics?
Well, you really can't. Just about everything comes in plastic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can do your best to minimize it, but you're not going to be able to avoid it completely unless you like just grew your own food. Maybe the only way.
Yeah. The first time I told her about it, she picked up like almost every food that we had and said, this is in plastic. This is in plastic. This is in plastic. Like, what are we going to do about this? Like the bread's in plastic. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to avoid it. Feel like a lot of it could be diminished just by drinking your water out of a non-plastic container. But then I started to think, what about when we get water out of one of those big plastic jugs and pour it into the metal or glass container? There's still some plastics there too.
Yeah, we just got one of those 5-gallon ones. It's like the same thing. It's a giant plastic one and they pour it into their metal tumblers, but it's been sitting in the plastic for, well, actually, we don't even know how long it's been sitting in the plastic by the time we go pick up the refill. So
yeah, so I don't even know what to do. Basically, do you have to get filtered water out of the tap?
Yeah, essentially.
There's still going to be plastic somewhere along the way.
Yeah, but it's about minimizing the risk. So, I mean, it's still better than drinking exclusively from water bottles.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel freaked out about it, but at the same time, hard to really get rid of all the plastic. So your kids are off for spring break now.
Yes, a very weird spring break. It's a different week now. threw everything off. But we did get to go to the stock show, so they were happy about that.
Well, my kid's back in school. Usually something happens that reminds me about something that happened to me in my life or my experiences. So she recently had a test where she had to memorize all 50 states. And so the night before the test, she's like, I don't know half the states. I'm like, what the heck? Like, did you not study? Like, you're going to get a 50% on this test. So I try to help her with my techniques. Basically, my techniques are built on all of my experience. And I told her, okay, the sections you don't really know, like, let's just come up with like a word or like some kind of abbreviation and try to remember that. So like for Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, I said, okay, that's MAG. So just remember MAG right there.
MAGA?
But we had, not MAGA. I don't think there was a MAGA to make there. And then for some other areas, we just came up with like just abbreviations that didn't really even make sense, but just to shorten it in a way where she could remember. She did that in like 30 minutes. And the next day she took the test and she got 100. It just reminded me of like why it's so important that we focus on education and how important it is for educated parents to like teach their kids the way to be good students. So imagine if she didn't have me doing that, she probably would have gotten a 50, maybe a 70. I don't know. But she got 100. And I was pretty impressed that just 30 minutes of tutoring got her to that point.
Yeah, I think at this grade level, you can get away with stuff like that, but still, it's a good technique that she can probably use in the future.
Yeah. I mean, of course, like as she advances, I'm going to have other techniques or other tips. But at this point, I think it's more like little tips that make a difference in a short period of time. And also a lot of it too, for me at this point, is just motivating her and making her believe in herself. Strangely, I feel like that's huge. And a lot of parents either don't know how to do that or don't do that. I think believing in yourself is a huge thing. When we were talking about that article, Who Gets to Graduate, I looked back at it. Apparently it was a 2014 article. One of the things that they pointed out was that when the student who was featured in the article was doing poorly in school at UT Austin, she called the mom and the mom was pretty negative. Like, well, maybe you don't belong there. Maybe you're not ready for it. And I'll say that I never heard that from my parents. Like, I feel like it's always been positive, very motivational. And that's the way I am with my kid. So she's like, oh, I'm going to do horrible. I'm like, you could still do okay. You could just try your best. Just study as much as you can right now. But that's the way our parents have always been. Yeah, even when I brought up to Dad recently the possibility of running for Congress, I was like, oh, it might be really hard. You know, it's a pretty Republican district at this point. And he's like, don't be so negative. So there's been a lot of positivity that has helped me. And that's why I call myself borderline delusional, because at this point, I believe I can do anything. And probably because of that's the way I was brought up.
That reminds me, though, that you guys were very negative. Like when I started off my college journey, because I was doing very bad. And you and Dad were like, you're just like dumb. I was like, what the hell?
Were we?
Yes. Like I did very poorly in the beginning because
I thought it was because you weren't even doing your work, though.
Yeah, but I didn't know how to do anything at that point as far as studying. So like I didn't really understand that I couldn't just show up anymore and just pass.
So what you're saying is that somehow you get negativity. I don't know why. And that as a result, it actually made you not believe in yourself and didn't help initially.
Well, that's kind of the thing where like this whole Hispanic culture, I've heard this, where the parents are very adamant that the daughter has to get educated and has to be successful. And like the sons, like in our case, I feel like, well, I know what happened to me because like once our parents got divorced, I felt like there was no push for me to do well academically whatsoever. It was like athletics were more important, and that ended up hurting me for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is what it is. I just I remember that right when you were saying that about the positivity thing and all that, and I was just like, that didn't happen to me.
So you think it has to do with that dynamic that you're talking about? That
Yeah.
they tend to focus more on the academics of women for some reason?
For sure. And that's why when we talk about that topic about how like women are advancing and men are not, well, not that they're not, but not as much. I think that's what's kind of been happening. They put more focus into the daughters.
Was I joking though? Because I don't remember thinking that you're dumb.
I don't know. You guys would always just call me and bully me
Bully you how?
with that stuff. And I was just like, oh, like, well, what could I
Was
even
it like some kind of reverse psychology?
If it was, it didn't work. Like I just had to pull myself out of it eventually. And I was just like, man, like I just need to try. And like, if I do bad, and I was like, shit, maybe I am just dumb.
It doesn't make sense that I would actually think you were dumb though, because I remember you got a pretty decent score on your ACT for like not really trying and for not even doing honors classes.
Oh, I suppose.
I mean, I think you got a higher score than the woman in the article that I told you about.
Maybe.
And who gets to graduate? She got a 22.
Yeah, I got higher than that.
Yeah, she was top 10%, so that's why she got into UT Austin. But then when she got there, she was struggling. And so the article is talking about the challenges that certain people have, especially when, like I said, they don't have the support structure. They don't have a parent who knows what to do because maybe they weren't a college graduate.
Yeah, and that also reminds me that like with my kids, we make them do their homework and like I'll help them. They'll cry like if they get stuff wrong. And I'm like, that's why I'm here to help you. But they're starting to finally realize that there's kids that show up and don't do their homework. You're like at the same age. That means that when those kids go home, either they get no help or the parents don't care. I'm like, yeah, like I don't want you to go through that. Like I went through a period where academics were no longer important as far as my guardian was concerned. So it ended up being bad for me. Like I ended up having student debt where I probably should have had none. So they're starting to slowly understand that that we're helping them for a reason. Like, yeah, like I can show you an example of exactly why you shouldn't follow that path because I already did it and like ended up costing me more money and time than it should have.
Well, I don't know. Is it like something about the Hispanic culture in this area where they think that men are going to be okay without education?
I think so. From what I've seen, like there's a lot of kids that immediately go to the oil rigs because they want to make a lot of money. They don't want anything to do with education. They don't want debt. I think we have one mutual friend who's obsessed with not having debt. I didn't really think about it the way you said until you told me like you're kind of investing in yourself. But even if you tell people this, they don't, it's hard for them to see it. They're like, oh, well, I'm gonna have to spend all this money and it's on you. Like it's your future.
Yeah. I don't think I had originally seen it as investment in myself. I just knew that it had to be done and it was going to work itself out. And at the end of the day, I was going to make a lot more money compared to the debt. The person that told me about investing in yourself or to see it in that way is probably the smartest person I've ever met. And possibly I'll never meet someone like that ever again. He's that smart and he's a PhD at this point. He basically said to think about any expenses related to education, even like the living expenses. Think of it as investing in your future self and it'll work itself out usually. I think particularly for medicine, it works out. I would say probably for a lot of fields, it works out as long as you make a pretty solid decision about what you're going to get your education in.
Well, we definitely need to get back to making that important for everybody, but I don't know. I don't know if we'll get back there anytime soon.
I mean, I can understand people being fearful of debt, especially if you come from a family where there just isn't much money. And we come from a family like that. There's not a lot of money in this family. It just is what it is, right? So it can seem scary. Maybe you think, well, if I can't pay that debt, then what am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to have anyone that can help me out. I'm going to be bankrupt or something. Maybe that's a thought process.
Yeah, and if there's not a good support system there, maybe they're not inclined to even try because they're going to be like, we told you, now you're in debt. What are you going to do? Versus having somebody that's pushing you to make it to the end.
Yeah. There are a lot of issues that are part of the culture down here. And I will say that people not really knowing what to do and how to help their kids with their education is a big part of it. And also like what you're saying about cultural issues as well. I think I was just being, I don't know, I think it was a reverse psychology thing because I didn't think you were dumb the whole time. But it doesn't make any sense. I knew that you were just like sleeping a lot and like not going to your classes.
Well, yeah, but I was also like at that point, unfortunately, I hate to admit this, like when you guys were telling me that I was probably an alcoholic at that time, I definitely was. Because I mean, I couldn't make any deadlines. Like I couldn't, like if I drank, like I just couldn't, I was a completely unreliable person. So it took a lot of things for me to like get out of that. So
Yeah.
it was.
Well, I'm sorry for
it was a hard
calling you dumb.
time. I don't even think about that. In the end, I was being dumb though.
Well, maybe being dumb, but not actually dumb.
Yeah, but you let it go long enough, then you actually become dumb. So luckily,
Yeah.
I snapped out of it.
Speaking of this topic, this reminds me of that Tucker Carlson Chris Cuomo interview. So basically, what bothered me about this is the whole anti-DEI thing and how Tucker Carlson frames it. So he's talking about it needs to be merit-based. And remember what I talked about before, they're going to say it's all about scores. So he's like, yeah, standardized testing, that's how you do it. Okay, and Chris Cuomo says, but you have to understand there's certain people that didn't get the same education. Some people get a better education than others, and so that impacts the scores. Tucker Carlson doesn't really buy that argument and ends up saying that the truth is darker and that the scores are really mostly genetic. I think that's racist and stupid and really evidence that Tucker Carlson is this like very sheltered boarding school baby. He went to a boarding school, which is fine. I have nothing against people who went to boarding schools. But do understand that other people didn't get that type of education. And you can't say that, oh, you're genetically superior because you got a better score after you got like this 70K a year education and probably 20K in SAT prep. So he's a boarding school kid. So is his wife. And they sent all their kids to the same boarding school. So now you're trying to say, oh, well, if you don't get the scores, it's not because of the fact that we went to boarding schools and you went to like some random public school in the Rio Grande Valley. It's because, oh, we're genetically superior.
But do you think he actually believes that, or he's just feeding into the base and he knows that's what's going to get them to continue following them? It's a very slippery slope with what they're going with. Eventually, people are going to realize that every single person can't be DEI. I mean, for example, that article, what was it? The guy that was like shot like 3 times, he got a Medal of Honor and they put DEI in the URL.
Yeah.
I mean, what about that experience made it a DEI?
Anything that's related to, I guess, favoring or highlighting a certain ethnicity is DEI. I do believe that he believes it. He's been known to be a racist for many, many years. He's the one who started the replacement theory, which is the theory that's going around with Elon and Rogan now, which is that, oh, the Democrats were trying to bring in all these illegals, make them citizens, and basically make every state a Democrat state.
But this has always been a possibility. So it's always been talked about that eventually the minorities were going to become the majority. And now that it's getting closer and closer, they use that to their advantage. There's all this fear mongering. Now all the minorities are bad people, like if they're not already citizens. I'm not sure if like white people like are actually scared of this, or they just got enough people to be scared that they were able to make this movement. It's hard to tell. The white people that I know like are nothing like that. I mean, I've run into some that I can kind of tell they think they're superior in some way. But as far as like the rest of the country, like I don't think we're there. How do you get enough people to get out there and vote though? Because I mean, obviously not enough people cared to be like, well, it's not really going to be a problem if he takes over again.
Well, I think that they are working on things in multiple different ways. One particular thing may work on a certain group of people. Another particular thing may work on a certain group of people. I mean, you have Hispanics who love Tucker Carlson and who obviously are very MAGA, even though these people are clearly racist. Tucker Carlson's clearly racist. And that doesn't make sense at all to me. I'm like, how? Tucker Carlson is a racist. He's telling you in the Chris Cuomo pod that certain groups of people are their intelligence is inferior because of genetics, and that's why they're not getting the scores. And that's why we need to be merit-based. I mean, I don't know. It could also be that some people don't really get it. Like, do they not see that he's saying racist things by saying these things? I don't know.
And that was his response, right? When he was pressed that like some people don't have the same advantages. And he was that what his response was? That the answer was actually darker?
Yep. I can pull up the exact words.
So he doubled down when he was challenged.
He doubled down and told the people they should just prepare more. The people who are not getting the scores. Because Chris Cuomo, I thought, was pretty good about kind of pushing back on a lot of these narratives that Tucker has. Although I'm not sure why he would want to engage with Tucker. That also made me feel weird because I don't think you should be friendly with someone like Tucker if you're Chris Cuomo. So Cuomo says, I'm saying that you also have to be open to the reality that the kids aren't going to do the same on the test when one has had a good education and one has not had a good education. Then Tucker says, there's a lot of science behind that and the truth is darker and harder to deal with, okay? Which is that intelligence is the product of environment to some extent, but it's mostly genetic. And intelligence is a lot of factors in success, but intelligence is the single most important over time in big populations. Smarter populations do better.
And did he cite any actual source, or is that just what he said?
I don't think he cited a source.
Because he's making it seem like it's scientific.
And already, like, we've gotten to the point where affirmative action has been struck down, and there have been other decisions that also decrease the amount of, like, advantage that certain minorities or specific groups would get. But they're trying to make it even worse. They're trying to make it to where you can't help a person who was disadvantaged.
It's basically just taking away any opportunities.
Well, trying to take away opportunities from people who may have the talent, but maybe didn't go to the boarding school, maybe went to like some really bad public school, and as a result, that's why they didn't get the SAT score.
Yeah, I still don't get the end game, and I still don't get how you say how people don't see it, because I was talking to our trainer today, Rick, and I was just like, I'm sure you've met people. I told because I've met people like this. Like the second they talk to you, like once they start telling you a story, you're kind of like, this sounds like made up. Like everything they're telling you is made up.
Yeah.
Over time, like you might still be friends with these people. You like them. They're cool to hang around with. But like anytime they tell you anything of substance, you're like, this is bullshit. It's a fucking lie. Like you already know. So to me, it's like how I told you yesterday that that Donald Trump claimed he won that golf tournament, which he's claimed he's won a few times. You can see that he's a habitual liar. Like he lies about things that are inconsequential. Like it doesn't matter if he won that tournament or not. But the fact that he does these things, like it's kind of a red flag. Like that he's just going to lie about everything. So I don't understand. Like it's how Carlson, Trump, or any of these people that follow this reasoning don't get called out on it.
I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to call them out on it. So we need to get more people out there and like in the alternative media sources calling them out, because as we already know, they've been very successful at discrediting the mainstream media. So they're not even looking at ABC, CNN, New York Times anymore. So there have to be other ways to talk to them.
Well, yeah, of course. I even saw, that's when I asked you if the whitehouse.gov page was actually real, because it literally on the government page called CNN losers. And I was like, am I on the right page? Did I like go to a wrong URL? But no, it ended up being on there, CNN losers.
Yeah, so you basically have to build up some alternative media sources, some podcasts, some other websites that people will look at that will push back, because people may still be open to other sources, and maybe they listen to our podcast or some other podcast, and maybe it's like, okay, wait a minute, maybe Rogan is lying, or maybe Rogan is stupid.
Perhaps. It's just kind of hard where they have this mechanism right now that's very strong. Anybody talking about them like is either wrong or they're crying about it. So they're just like, just deal with this, like tough shit. I don't understand how you actually hit back, because they have like built-in responses to everything at this point. Their base, they all have the same response. So how do you stop 80 plus million people from thinking like that?
Well, but remember that like 20 to 30 million listen to Rogan, and I don't know how many million listen to Tucker. So there has to be pushback on those people, because those people are really bad. And there's a lot of lying and stupidity that goes on with Tucker and Rogan. I told you about the Club Maha podcast. I don't think I mentioned it on the last pod, but I talked about it. And I just randomly listened to this podcast, and they start talking about crazy stuff about Tom Hanks and supposedly he's a pedophile and all these crazy things. And there's this guy on there, Ian Carroll, who's part of the co-hosts. And I look him up and he had been on Rogan in the past week. People said a lot of negative things about Ian Carroll after that, actually, because they said he was actually being pretty anti-Semitic. He was saying stuff about Epstein and claiming that he was related to some stuff going on with Israel. And this guy is like a rando. He calls himself an independent researcher, just spouting BS on Rogan. And also, I listened to the beginning of the pod, and it was like stupid too. They're like, oh yeah, we love conspiracy theories. Like, you shouldn't be listening to people who love conspiracy theories because most of the time it's bullshit. They also mentioned, oh, it used to be like you were a nut if you believed in conspiracy theories, and now it's okay. Like, how is that good? Like, how is that like productive? That's not a positive thing. But yeah, that's the kind of crap that goes on now. Just people make up complete crap. And I honestly am concerned at some point about people being delusional. And maybe I did mention it on the last pod because I am worried about the mental health of some of these people. They say things that are like delusional. Like either you're completely lying, you're completely stupid, you're delusional, or all three.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of, well, not a lot of it, like a little bit of this on the last pod. But to me, it's always been like with Tucker, Fox, and even Rogan, their facial expressions. Like I've always told you guys, like to me, it's like kind of like watching a comedy show. It's like, how do people actually keep coming back to this and believing these people who can't even keep like a straight face?
Is part of it that people just want to be entertained and they'll believe things that are entertaining because they don't want to be bored? Because that's pretty sad too.
I don't know. I mean, I just think like if I would like tell people like all this serious, all these serious things and made those same faces, people probably just be like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah, like the Ian Carroll Rogan pod also started saying stuff like, oh, you know, Nixon was somehow involved with JFK's assassination. Like he knew something. Like it was just going crazy.
Well, wouldn't they have found that out today? I saw in the news this morning that they were releasing like all the JFK stuff, but even the news was mentioning like 99% of the stuff that they're talking about has already been out there. Yeah,
that's also like a very small piece of news compared to all the other crap that Trump was doing this past week. What do you think about the pardons are void?
I think that was insane. I saw it and I was just like, okay, if you're going to go this far, you're going to actually have to prove that he was not the one using the auto pen, as they keep calling it.
Well, I did some research on this, and the auto pen is not even relevant because presidents are known to use auto pens, and there have been opinions about this in the past that allowed the use of auto pens. And there's also been a case where they said that a pardon can be an oral pardon. It doesn't even have to be a written pardon.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of intrigued to see if he's actually going to try to go after like Hunter now because since he's claiming like all these things are null and void.
Well, apparently you cannot revoke a pardon either. So there are so many issues with this person mentally, and also the fact that he doesn't know anything about the Constitution or the laws.
Yeah, but they're still calling for, which justice are they talking about, or is it just a judge that they want to impeach him?
I think it's a lower court judge.
Yeah, it's not a justice, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not a Supreme Court at this point, but I'm sure they'll be calling for a Supreme Court impeachment at some point. So that's why Roberts today said that's not appropriate. Impeaching judges wouldn't be the way to do things. The way to do things is to go through the appellate process.
I think I read somebody else had said something like, there's no Obama judges, there's no Trump judges, there's no Clinton judges.
This is going off the rails really quick. And it's only March 18th.
Well, that's why I'm saying I'm intrigued to see what he's going to do. Like, I know you're saying that you can't revoke a pardon, but they're ignoring all president at this point. Like, they don't care about anything.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I'm still waiting for that first Supreme Court ruling. And I kind of think we'll know where we're going to go for these next 4 years once that ruling comes down.
Considering what's going on, I think that some of the justices may rule in a certain way based on what they're seeing from the Trump presidency. Maybe now they're going to be willing to hold the line on birthright citizenship because of what this guy's doing and how he's threatening judges and threatening to revoke pardons and whatnot.
I mean, they should have seen this from the beginning. I don't know why it would take what's happening now for them to grow a backbone.
I mean, they could also modify their decision on the immunity, because there was that immunity decision. I think it was last year that people were up in arms about. They could review that again in some way. I don't know if there would be another case maybe where that could be reviewed again. There are going to be so many Trump cases. There probably is another case that can bring up the issue of immunity again.
Is this the case that Barrett's going to recuse herself from, or is it another one?
The immunity case?
Yeah, there's some case where she said that she's just not going to be a part of it, which, like I said, to me, is basically allowing it to go through. If you think that you'd vote against it, you should probably partake in that case.
Yeah. I don't think that it's related to immunity. So there was already a case decided that seemed to give him, or any president, more immunity. So what I'm thinking is maybe they'll review this issue again, but it's probably going to have to involve another case. I'm only a third-year law student, so I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but I think it would have to involve another case. And if another case comes up where they can discuss immunity again, then maybe they'll change things because of what's happening with Trump.
I don't know what's going on with that guy.
I mean, what do you mean you don't know what's going on? He's stupid. He's narcissistic. He's got mental issues. Just think of the fact that he is winning golf tournaments when he's not really winning. Like, what is wrong with you mentally where you have to fake win golf tournaments to make yourself feel good and look good?
Yeah, the funniest part of that is, like, I don't know if you read it, where every time they would announce he was the winner, like, everybody in attendance was just like shocked, like, what? Like
they didn't even see him play.
Yeah, they didn't even see him play. Or the one that really made me laugh was where he supposedly had won, but nobody had seen him play Saturday. But he said that he had played a really good round a few days before, so that was going to count as his Saturday round.
That's insane. Like, I can believe, but I can't believe we have gotten to this point where we elected this guy. And I honestly blame it all on Fox and right-wing media. They continue to create this damage because they keep brainwashing people with BS. Like, oh my God, Kamala is such an idiot and a communist. You know what? If Kamala would be in office right now, we'd be relaxing. We'd be stable. We would be calm. We would not be freaking out about everything and worrying about recession and worrying about what the hell he's going to do tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the other thing I'm very unclear on. I don't understand why he keeps shifting on the tariffs. And now all of a sudden, April 2nd is where it's all going to happen. I mean, the markets are going crazy because of this. Like, there's no stability, and he doesn't understand that. He tried to say it's called flexibility. But no, like, any business owner knows, like, you can't really be making plans if you don't know what things are going to cost. You can't just be like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to do this. And they tell you, like, the next day, oh, well, now there's like 30% tariff. It's going to cost this much more. You're going to be like, oh, shit, well, never mind. I'm not going to do that.
The Fox News person today was even getting frustrated with the administration because she's like, you guys have told us 4 different reasons for the tariffs now. Like, what is it? Like, you tried to say it was about trade, then you tried to say it was about fentanyl, then you tried to say it was about something about the food safety or something. She's like, this is not making sense. Like, we need some kind of stability.
Well, the Canadian one definitely is about nothing because the amount of fentanyl that comes in here from Canada is less than 1%. You don't have a lot of illegal immigrants. It's just Trump trying to force them to become a state. Another stupid thing that's not going to happen. That's unnecessary trade war right there. Like, we're not going to get anything out of it.
Well, no one even understands why he wants Canada to be a state because he didn't campaign on it. And all of a sudden he keeps on harping on Canada being a state. So no one understands, and people are just coming up with weird excuses why they need to be a state.
Yeah, I don't get that. I don't get the Greenland thing either. I've seen on there like, oh, it's a good place to have as far as like strategy against, I don't know against who, but they were trying to tell me like, oh, you'd be surprised to find out how many people from Greenland actually want this to happen. And I was just like, based on what? Like, where
the polls say that they actually don't want to become part of the United States. Exactly.
But somebody who I know and claims to not be a Trump supporter, but knows everything about Trump was like, no, like they really want to become a part of the U.S. And I'm like, I don't think that's what's going to happen. But I also don't believe you. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think they want to be taken over.
Yeah, I'm not sure that anyone can really know what is driving this mentally ill and stupid man. But I think that he has two goals. One goal is to be considered the best president of all time, which I don't even know why he needs to be considered that, because his people are always saying it. I mean, Pam Bondi was like, oh, this is the greatest president of all time. Like, that's bizarre. Like, I've never heard that before with any president, to just constantly be saying that that president's the best of all time. I don't know. Somehow in his mind, I think he thinks if he expands the U.S. into Canada and with Greenland, that he'll be considered the best of all time by everyone. And then the tariffs, he just believes that they're going to make us money. So he's going to come up with a million stupid excuses, but at the end of the day, he wants them to stick.
I think he knows that the tariffs are not going to make any money. I think he knows.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm like 100% sure he knows it's not going to make money.
But then what's the purpose?
He needs to make all this revenue back from all the tax cuts he's giving. And then if they somehow pull this off of no taxes for people that make $150K or less, you're losing all this government funding. You need to get it somewhere. And tariffs will give him some of it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He thinks he's going to get money from the tariffs, that we're going to make money.
We're not going to make money. It's going to have to go right back into the government because you lost all the taxes.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, he somehow thinks that that's going to make a solvent to create these tariffs.
Yeah, it definitely won't. He knows that he's not actually going to make money.
But that's what doesn't make sense then. Like, what are you doing then if you, like, it's not going to make things better then?
It doesn't matter. I mean, if you're a rich person, you don't care about any of the things that are happening. Like, you're not on Medicaid. You're not on Social Security. Who cares if like all these things are gone? Make the regular people pay with the tariffs.
I don't know. It's bizarre to me that we got here, even though most of what he's done was exactly what he said he was going to do. It wasn't like Democrats were making it up. Like, he was saying, I'm going to do these things. I'm obsessed with tariffs. I'm obsessed with being as racist as possible and deporting everyone that I don't like that's supposedly illegal. I mean, he even wanted to get rid of the Haitians, remember? And those people were on like a protected visa.
Yeah.
I mean, he said most of this except the things like annexing Canada or Greenland. I'm pretty sure he didn't say those things because I did pay attention to him quite a bit.
What about the Panama Canal? I think I might have heard something about that during the campaign, but I'm not sure.
That I don't know. He really did everything that he said, like putting RFK in the administration, putting Elon in there. He was very clear.
Well, that's giving him credibility right now with his base, though. Like, he's doing exactly what he said he would do.
I guess so, but apparently some of that base is like, I didn't actually think he was going to do those things. Because some of the things have been harmful to some of the base, and some of those people have spoken out and said, well, I didn't really think he was going to do it. Like, I didn't really think he was going to deport all these people. I didn't really think he was going to inflict tariffs that were going to affect our farms and whatnot.
I mean, everybody knew he was going to be on a revenge tour if he got elected, so I don't know how you're shocked by anything that's happening.
Like, the DOJ speech was crazy, too. He basically said he was going to persecute people. Like, he was on a revenge tour at the DOJ.
Yeah, but I mean, he did say he was going to do that. Like, we've known this the whole time.
Hopefully we can make it through. I know that some of the right-wing people are like, oh my God, you guys are so dramatic. It's like, no, this shit is really bad. I mean, you're hearing it from a lot of places. You're hearing it from most of the lawyers in this country. You're hearing it from like people who are almost getting deported who are actually citizens.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting pretty bad. I don't think he knows what he's doing at this point because he's always been really about like the Dow and like how high it is. Apparently when somebody put a graphic up, and like I said, I'm not going to say it's 100% accurate because I really don't trust a lot of videos, especially if I consume them on social media. But like when he was talking about the tariffs, like you could literally see the Dow going down like actively.
It's been down and now they're trying to claim that, well, the market was actually a bubble and it needed to correct.
That might be the thing that turns people because, I mean, now they're really starting to say like we're going to have to feel some pain for this to get better, which is what Elon said. But I would never take the word of a billionaire that the rest of us need to suffer when you're not.
I don't have anything against people that are rich, people that go to boarding schools. But at the same time, like some of these people have no self-awareness, like Tucker Carlson, like Elon Musk, like Donald Trump. Like you've never lived the life of a normal person, apparently, or you forgot. It's a lot harder for a normal person. A normal person may not be able to eat next month if all of a sudden they lose their job. It's pretty crazy for them to try to say this to people who live normal lives, have normal jobs, normal incomes, when they don't understand at all. Of course, they're always going to be able to eat, but some of us, I mean, maybe not me, like I feel like I would be okay for a little bit at least, but a lot of people that we know, maybe if things really get bad, they may actually not have enough food to eat or may have to find another place to live.
Yeah, most people that declare bankruptcy don't stay rich like Donald Trump did. Most normal people that declare bankruptcy kind of have to like pick up the pieces, struggle to get back up and running again. I was reading something about when he was in charge of the casinos, like when Atlantic City was still doing really well. Like his were the worst and he was always losing money, but somehow like he was always getting like millions of dollars like personally. He didn't care like when the casinos went down. I mean, he still talks about it like, oh, it was great for him. It's like, yeah, it was great for him. He got rich, but tons of people lost their jobs. While all the other casinos were making money, none of his were. Like this idea that he's a great businessman as well is like, it's just out there. Just read about any of his businesses, really look up Atlantic City, and you'll see that he's not very good at anything. What he's good at though is somehow getting people to give him money, which he's still doing, whether it's with selling merch, conning people with his fake crypto coin. I don't know what makes people want to give this guy money.
I don't know. I can't wrap my head around that. Like, I'm not sure how you build that kind of support in your life to where you can get through multiple bankruptcies and still be rich. That's why you shouldn't have people like this running our country. They can't wrap their heads around our lives and how we can't just go bankrupt and still be able to eat and still have millions of dollars or whatever.
Yeah, which makes it so hard that they want to cut Social Security, like money that people have been putting there their whole lives. And it's like, oh, it's a Ponzi scheme as per Elon.
I'm not sure what they're doing exactly. So I'm not sure that they're cutting it, but my understanding is right now what they're doing is making it harder for people. And that's going to harm people who are older or maybe don't have the resources, who can no longer just call in to set up their benefits or get help with their benefits. When they're making it to the point where they want people to go in person and maybe there's not even enough staff, so maybe it takes a long time to get an appointment.
There's definitely not going to be enough staff now. I mean, everybody's fired.
Yeah, but did you read about that that's part of the strategy to like basically make it harder to get rid of the phone lines?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they want everybody to just give up. It's kind of how they try to get people to just quit from the government jobs.
So much that we could talk about, so much going wrong. Meanwhile, Justin's having fun in San Francisco and got to go to a Golden State game that he's going to have to tell us about when he comes back on the pod.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch all of it. I fell asleep, but I did see that Russell Westbrook was playing really well.
Yeah, I watched most of it. I think I stopped about 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Russ did look really good. He had a lot of assists. He was making things flow really well. Honestly, Golden State didn't look good. Their defense didn't look good. I know Steph may have been tired and his back was hurting possibly, but they didn't really look like a playoff contender in that game.
I kind of feel like Golden State and maybe Minnesota kind of went through the same thing yesterday because they both ended up losing to teams that like had multiple starters out. Like when you're trying to make these runs at the end of the season to move up the standings, like you have to put so much effort to like almost never lose. So eventually you just run out of gas. So I kind of feel like that's what happened to both of them last night. So
do you think that there's still a chance that they're a playoff contender? Because they didn't look good versus Denver.
Yeah, I definitely think that they're probably still a contender. But like you said, when you're trying to win like every single game like that, it takes a lot of energy. And they've had some close calls as it is. So probably just off night. I imagine both of those teams will keep it rolling.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on them because if it's not just a symptom of fatigue, it's pretty concerning because there was no Jokic, no Murray. They basically relied on Russ and Aaron Gordon, and they did really well against Golden State at Golden State.
Well, that's the other thing. Even the coach of the Nuggets was saying like it was kind of a game where he wanted to see what kind of team he had. And he was saying like, well, are the guys actually going to want to play? And it turns out that Russ really wanted to play. So his energy rubbed off on everybody else, and they were able to pull it off because of that.
I think we talked about it early in our pod's life that Russ is that guy, that he is always going to try his best. So I guess it wasn't unexpected that he would play that way. He had a triple-double. I think he only had about 12 points or so, but he had like 16 assists. It was crazy. He looked really good. He was really moving the ball around really well.
Yeah, he's still really productive. I don't think they'll get out of the West, but I think there's a couple of matchups that could get them at least to the Western Conference Finals. I still think they'd struggle with Minnesota again. I think they'd figure out the Lakers again too. Maybe this time the Lakers could actually win two games, maybe 3.
3 games? What? I don't know, man. LeBron is 40 years old.
Well, assuming all the Lakers are fully healthy, and maybe
isn't Luka hurting now too?
Luka's been hurting, so we'll see about that. But I mean, I think the Nuggets with the right draw could still get to the Western Conference Finals at least. But if they draw OKC, I think OKC's still gonna make it.
Yeah.
But we'll see what Justin thinks because he saw him in person.
I don't know if we're gonna do another pod before he comes back, so it may take a while to hear from him. But at least he got to see Steph and Jimmy Butler and Russell Westbrook and Aaron Gordon, and I'm sure it was a lot of fun.
Yep, definitely.
All right, well, I think it's a good time to end the pod. As always, promote us to your friends. We're on Apple, Spotify, our iHeartRadio, YouTube, Amazon. Rate us 5 stars if you like our podcast. Email us questions at casadecabasospod@gmail.com. Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Adios.